Our next speaker is, as all of you know, Spatial Endeavour is scheduled to be its final flight. And that speaker is Hutchison, who is Endeavour's flow director. She'll tell you what she does. Pretty much all things getting Endeavour ready to fly come their day in her team. Thank you.
Thanks for you guys being here and supporting us and what we do. You know, it's a pleasure to be able to have all of these people out here, watching us, and we're so proud to be able to provide you a little bit of a taste of this shuttle history with you. First, I'll talk a little bit, as he mentioned, my name is Dana Hutchison. I'm the Endeavour Flow Director, the NASA Flow Director for Endeavour. So most people ask me, well, what does that mean? What I do is I oversee all the operations that happen with the orbiter Endeavour, the solid rocket boosters, and the external tank. And we work on preparing all of that and getting ready for launch. So we start at landing. When Endeavour lands on the runway, we start from there. And we do all the launch preparations, maintenance, repair anything that happened on orbit. Any of the issues we have, we replace some tiles, and I'll do all the inspections on the vehicle and get Endeavour ready for launch. And also in the meantime, we're actually refurbishing the solid rocket boosters. So we take the 8 center segments, and we send them back to Utah by rail, and they get filled with the solid rocket propellant. And they come back to us, and we start the stacking process on the mobile launcher platform. And also, at the same time, I'll talk a little bit about external tank 122, because external tank 122 is a little unique. It was the last external tank that was delivered from the chute assembly facility in Louisiana and shipped around here to Kennedy Space Center. It was the last tank delivered. So we get the prize for having the last tank on this STS-134 mission. External tank 122 has a unique history as well. It was actually prepared to be delivered to Kennedy Space Center in 2002. So it's a little bit of an older tank. Once it was actually being prepared to be delivered, but then we had a little backlog of external tanks here at Kennedy Space Center. So they actually delayed the delivery, and then we had the Columbia accident. And some modifications were required to fix that tank and get it back ready. But then in 2005, as most of you know, we had Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana. And with that hurricane, we actually had a little bit of surface damage on the tank. So they kind of pushed the tank aside for a little bit and said, well, we'll fix the repairs, start working on the repairs. But then in 2008, they decided that we were going to fly some last missions and we need this tank. So they started fixing the tank back up and getting it ready to be assigned to a mission. Delivered here in the fall of last year. So Endeavour spent over 10 years at the chute assembly facility, and then it came here to Kennedy Space Center last fall. And so all of this processing that we do, we coordinate all of the integration of all the vehicles stacked with the solid rocket boosters, stacking on the mobile launcher platform, and once they're stacked, then we get the external tank prepared. The external tank will be mated with the solid rocket boosters. And then actually this year, and only slightly, a couple of days after the STS-133 launch, we rolled Endeavour over to the vehicle assembly building. And that's when we started the make process of Endeavour with the external tank. And so that only happened just a couple of days after the STS-133 launch. So we have a great team that works a lot of different things at once. And my team on Endeavour, they focus a lot on Endeavour, but we have different various teams supporting other vehicles as well. And then on March 11th, we actually arrived at the launch pad, and we've spent about 7 weeks at the launch pad getting Endeavour and the space shuttle vehicle ready for launch. So part of my job is kind of overseeing all of those operations. We have 3 different main components of the space shuttle assembly that we oversee. And we work on the integration, the coordination, scheduling, and everything that has to do with all of those 3 main space shuttle components. I guess another thing I could talk about a little bit is my history. I like to kind of give a little plug for where I came from and how I got to this place as well. I graduated from Georgia Tech with a mechanical engineering degree in 2000. Oh yes, Georgia Tech is. Graduated in 2000 and came and started down here at Kennedy Space Center. This was my first job out of college. So as you can tell, the space shuttle program is very near and dear to me as well. Started in 2000 as an airframe airframe engineer, but I wasn't working for NASA at the time. I worked for United Space Alliance, the main contractor. And I started off as an airframe engineer, working in the thermal protection systems and the structure system. So I got certified in working in those two engineering groups. And then in 2006, I came over to NASA working in the Operations and Integration Division. So as we say down here, sometimes I went over to the dark side. I was in engineering, and then I went over to the operations and kind of coordinating everything. But yeah, it's a fun move to be able to come over to join the NASA family. So I did that in 2006. I started working on Atlantis as a vehicle processing engineer, then moved to a vehicle manager. And only a couple years ago, in 2009, did I become the NASA flow director for Endeavour. My first mission as the flow director was STS-127, and if you remember a little bit of the history on that, that was actually, we had the Launch on Need support mission for the Hubble Space Telescope mission for STS-125. So we were actually kind of a dual mission. We were STS-400 and 127 as well. So that was my first mission. It was a couple years ago. It did take us a couple of launch attempts to get off of the launch pad, but we finally made it in the summer of that 2 years ago. So this a little bit about STS-134 and what we've been doing. We landed from STS-130 over a year ago, so it was February of last year. We spent over a year in the processing facility, orbiter processing facility. So Endeavour spent over a year there. And I gave you the other day, we've spent about 7 weeks out at launch pad as well. So it's been a long journey for us getting ready for this last mission of Endeavour, the final flight. I talk about our team a little bit. I just have this position, but it takes a whole team of people to make this successful. So it's not just me standing up here and being able to talk to you. I represent thousands of people that actually put their heart and soul into this and making these launches successful. So I hope you guys get to enjoy it tomorrow just as much as we do. I tell you, there isn't a day that I want to miss a space shuttle launch. It's definitely an outstanding time and a good time to share that with all of you. So that's really all I wanted to talk about, but I guess we're going for questions now. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions for Dave?
Hey, you just said something that was similar to what Walid said, and I just love that you both focused on the emotional reasons why you do what you do, and a lot of people are here because we're interested in science and we're interested in cool stuff and gadgets and gizmos, but I'm really here to have an emotional experience, to be in touch with something that, an expression of what it means to be a human on this planet, what defines that more than figuring out a way to leave. I would love for you to speak just a little bit more about that, because I can't hear enough about the reasons why people choose careers in this field and what it means to them and the experiences that they have that some of us will never have. And just, you guys get to touch something so profoundly interesting about what it means to live on this earth that a lot of us would be fortunate just to get to hear you say two tiny things about it.
That's a great speech. I don't know if I can really add much more to what we said, but since I was a kid, I've been always interested in the space program. I can remember watching it on TV. I grew up in Georgia, but I could still see it on TV, and came down here to see one launch as a young kid, and just been fascinated with the space program, much like probably many of you. But even shooting off model rocketry with my brother in the backyard was one of the highlights of my career, or of my life. But coming down here and getting the opportunity to work down here, I can tell you a little glimpse of my first day of when I was actually interviewing. I walked into the orbiter processing facility, and I just kind of walked around and was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. There's platforms everywhere. And they said, no, look up. And I looked up, and you could see the tiles right there. The shuttle was standing right over me. And it was just amazing to be able to get to see that for the first time, and to be able to experience that, wow, this is what carries those astronauts up to space. And this is what I see on TV that we never get to experience, or we never are part of. But coming down here and actually having a piece and having a role, just one small part of the role of this America's space program. This is the legacy that we're going to be leaving behind. This is definitely history. And I hope to be able to share that in history books and say, in generations to come, when they look in their history books and say, "Oh, I know a lot about that," because I actually worked down here. It's something you can't really put into words. Really, being able to have a piece of that. One other quick story too. I was actually taking some folks around, touring some people around, and they were just amazed at the vehicle. Being able that first experience of seeing Endeavour, and they looked back and they said, "I've never felt more American being a part of, or standing here and seeing this." And because you get to witness this every day, even not just in America, we're recognized all over the country. This payload that we're taking up is comprised of 17 different countries that we're being able to take this payload up and represent the world, represent our whole, the Earth. And so yes, it is amazing. And I'll tell you also, when we get on orbit and we get to look back at all of those photos that they're taking, there's a little glisten in my eye when I get to see some of those photos, looking back on this Earth and how beautiful and gorgeous it is. But I really can't top the speech that you had. It was a great speech to start off with. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your first mission, the Hubble mission that you were just talking about, because as the chief scientist was just saying, Hubble really is an amazing achievement.
Right. Actually, I worked on Atlantis when we were preparing for that Hubble mission, and it was the last resurfacing mission for Hubble, STS-125. And then I moved over to work on Endeavour, and in that role, we were actually the launch on me support mission for the Hubble Space Telescope mission. So we had both vehicles, Atlantis and Endeavour, out at both launch pads A and B at the same time. We were getting them ready for launch about the same time. Endeavour was a little bit behind Atlantis. Atlantis, once it launched, the requirement for Endeavour was that it had to be launched within 7 days of the last Atlantis launch. So we had to be ready and prepared to launch. And how historic would that, we've never been doing that in the past. We've never done that where we prepared to launch within 7 days of the last of one launch. So that was definitely a sight to see when we had both vehicles out at the launch pads. I'm sure you've seen some of those pictures recently. It was both rotating service structures away from the vehicle. It was a beautiful sight. So that's the role that I worked on in respect to that Hubble Space Telescope mission.
We have time for another question for Dana. What are you doing next?
Oh, where did that come from?
Over there. To you.
Oh, sorry.
What are you doing next, and how long are you working with Endeavour, and what's next?
Actually, I have some other plans after Endeavour lands and we start the down mission processing is what we call it. I'm going to head over to the commercial crew side of NASA. So I'm going to start working in the launch vehicle systems for the commercial crew side. I actually haven't been engaged much in it recently because, of course, I've got mission number 1 at hand, which is to get Endeavour off safely and land it safely. But that's my plans for the future.
Well, I do have time for one more question right here.
I'm really impressed with how many women work in NASA in very senior positions, and wondering how we can encourage more girls to get into science and to get into positions like you have yourself.
Yeah, that's a comment I hear a couple of times. Actually, if you didn't know this, all NASA flow directors, all 3 of us on Atlantis, Endeavour, and Discovery are all women. On Endeavour, our core team is comprised probably 50-50 of women, so we do have a lot of women in our leadership here. Some of the things that we do is I go out and do some of the girls in engineering. It's some University of Central Florida does a lot of workshops, and I've done some of those where we're getting girls in middle school age interested. My mom is actually was a school teacher. She's retired now, but I've gone a number of times. She begs me a lot to go up there to Georgia and speak to her kids and her students. And I always give the whole speech about, because I think girls are a little afraid sometimes of getting into the science and the math, and they're a little worried about not performing as well. But I always give this speech when I talk to the students about how I was never the best in the class, the top of the class, and all that. I just had a dream, and I wanted to work on the space shuttle. I wanted to be working in the space program, be a part of this history, and I always give a speech to follow your dreams. And so I try to go out and just an outreach events with the girls a lot.
Dana, from a distance, all the shuttles look, all the orbiters look the same. What about, I'm here to ask this all the time, what about Endeavour's unique?
Well, we always, the canned answer that we mostly say is that all the vehicles are approximately the same, but it's really our teams that are different and unique, our core teams that are on each of the vehicles. It's how we operate, how we function, and it's definitely the team that makes this journey successful, makes our program successful. So each of the vehicles are about the same. Endeavour is the youngest, it's the baby. It's only been here at Kennedy Space Center for about 20 years, so it's the baby. And but we like to think, as part of the Endeavour family, we like to think that Endeavour is the best. So we got a little rivalry going, of course, in our office. We have a little competitive edge.